Alright, what's up? Today's video is how does movie feel the same yet different at the same time after all these years? You know, I say to people kind of frequently that like you could just like quit the game for a long time, come back, and it's still basically the same game. It has this weird ability to, well, I don't know, like it's the world record has gone down. Like, my first, like, good no-pause storage world record was, like, I think it was, like, 109.10. I think that was, like, the first, like, pretty good run. And now we're down to 1 flat 49. I don't know why all the things say dream Ukrainian lady awaits your message. Anyway. Yeah, so... You know, how has it gone down so much? And how, in some ways, has the game been basically the same, but then in other ways, it feels very different. So we're gonna briefly go over this 128.39, January 10th, 2020. This was the last run that didn't have buffers, and that was, like, enormous for getting the time down. That's one thing that does, like, change the identity of the game a little bit. Because, obviously, as you probably know, this went from, you know, never getting it, basically, to always get, well, you know, you reset on occasion, but almost always getting it. You get it, like, at least 90% of the time, compared to the previous, like, on a good day, like, 25 at the absolute very best. You know, and it isn't, I mean, obviously, there's buffer creep if, you know... And, this one is pretty easy compared to a lot of the other 2 frames, but it's still, you know, making it a lot easier. So now, you can just get, like, significantly better times, out of here. Like, here's what I mean, right? 333, right? This is a pretty, like, average run for back in the day, right? This is about the average run that I would expect out of Depression. You wanna know what a 333 gets you in 2024? In 100%, where I have to grab 2 extras, I get 333s consistently. Like, bro, I think 331 is possible if I can remember. Definitely 332 at the very least. But yeah, I get consistent 333s with the extras. And the actual strats are, like, the same, except the flower jump in No Cheese saves a little more than what we were doing back then. And that's it. A tiny time save with the flower jump and 333 Depression exit, like, yeah. And then obviously sandwich driving had nothing going on. 3K still had Bounceless and Steamed Early and Sponge Bowl. Sponge Bowl is still the same because you don't... there's no point in doing lag in Sponge Bowl. You get, like, no lag, and I got it, so... Yeah. And then this would be, like, pretty route-specific, but Floating Block Late now is the slowest time to do Floating Block Late, but we didn't know that back then, so I'm doing it now. Plus, to be fair, it's, like, hard anyway. You kind of want to get it out of the way. This was massive, too. Like, no one was doing this except for me, because the time save, you know, it's like 10 seconds. It saves a lot. But this is what you had to do. Dude, I cannot believe I risked that. That did not look like it worked. Well, anyway, I got it. Yeah, and then Rub-a-Dub didn't have Rub-a-Dub skip. But other than that, it's, like, the same as before Rub-a-Dub skip, you know? And then BBBH, obviously, this is no major glitches we're looking at right now. So... But again, like, this might seem familiar to you, even if you've never watched during this time period. You know, it's similar, right? Especially if you've seen, like, No Major Glitches runs. Like, post-Rub-a-Dub skip, like, before I got rid of BBBH backwards. SD102 is done as late as possible because it's incredibly easy. And then we finish up Weenie, and then we do Frogfish, you know, Rock Slide, Frogfish is it's got a tiny bit better strats, but... Yeah, no Skydive. That was, April 2020, so that's already something. There's just, like, these little things that really, like, pile up. Oh my god, I remember this. Look how much slower we drop. Like, you go further, but, like, holy... I don't remember how much that loses, but fucking it loses quite a bit. Like, it definitely over a second. And then no buffer super jump. You could get the super jump. We did know it existed. But, like, nobody ever got the super jump. Because, I mean, look at this, right? Like, look at this visual cue. Like, it's atrocious. Like, bro, I mean, that kinda looked like it worked, right? I was probably a frame off. So, the average run, you lose them like 3 seconds off the gold. And then there was no second super jump. So instead was flower jump, which is quite easy. And Now the Men was quite different from... Now the Men is one of the biggest differences. Because this was before Bungee Ball and Bungee Late. But that's not all, but you know, we're getting to it. So you would just do Bungee immediately, which means you couldn't predict the cycle. And the 2-frame, we usually wouldn't even risk it, because it only saved like 2 seconds. So pausing and unpausing, if you missed it, would be kind of not worth it. You know, you lose like a second for no real good like over that even. And then you don't want to risk the 2-frame, because it's hard to get here because of the nature of, you know, the 2 frames. Like, it's hard to get here consistently, so you don't want to risk that. It's because, you know, for a 2-second time save. And then there's no quick rest to speak of. This is so fucking primitive, Jesus Christ. And then we got, yeah, this is, okay, I actually found this. I found this version of Fast Lobster. This is the first Fast Lobster, so easier than what we do now, because it's just completely safe. Yeah, Now the Men is very... And then no Bash Gang, like, oh my lord. This area, this level was such an enormous run killer, and you wouldn't believe it from what you're probably seeing right now, that's the thing. And then no quick Chris, just Chris Skip. And then no Monster Buffer. Granted, to be fair, Monster Buffer is, like, low-key not really worth it. I'm too deep in and get it too consistently, but, like, honestly, I would not recommend it to, like, basically anybody unless you're going for, like, a top time, because it's, like, not that it's, like, top-level difficulty, but it saves, like, a second, and, like, I've missed the trick so many times because I went for the buffer. Like, it's just kind of, you know, so... Yeah, anyway, like, this seemed very easy, and then we got Floating Block Skip. Now, this fucking segment is evil as fuck, but I got it first try. Oh my, dude, oh my, okay, I'm such a pussy. That definitely worked. That definitely 1,000,000,000% worked. I'm such a... See, that's the other thing as well, right? Again, like, a lot of this is probably seeming familiar enough to you. The structure is certainly seeming familiar to you. But, like, that would not happen now. Like, you'd go for floating... Also, this was before Diet Floating Block Skip, so Floating Block Skip saved the whole 65 seconds, I believe the estimate was, or it might have been 60. Basically, it saved, like, a minute-ish. Yeah, so... Obviously... Because here's the thing, right? Again, it's hard to get to Now the Men consistently, right? So you don't get here very often. You're fucking nervous, right? And then you gotta do Floating Block Skip. And obviously the standards were far lower back then. But you gotta do Floating Block Skip. When you get Floating Block Skip first try, you're not thinking, alright, now time for the 2-frame. You're thinking, holy fuck, I just got past, like, the hardest segment in the run, arguably. This is a run. This is a run indeed. And that's the thing. You'd be shitting yourself. You wouldn't be going for the fucking 2-frame, yeah? Well, I mean, I tried to, but you wouldn't risk a 2-frame. You would never do that unless the run was dead or you got... Well, yeah, like, the run was bad or dead, basically. Or you got the 1-frame. But even then, sometimes people would get it, and they wouldn't even think to do the 1-frame. They'd get Floating Block Skip, and they wouldn't even think to do the 1-frame. That's the thing, like, that was quite frequent, too. And then SCDA was actually, like, not too dissimilar to now. No Circle... Well, Circle actually did exist back then, but it was considered, like, not worth it, because the token frame only saves, like, 3 seconds. So, considered not worth it, and I'm doing a fairly slow out of bounds, but still out of bounds nonetheless. Oh my god, I'm so fucking bad at the game. Go! No ledge grab skip here. I'll be grabbing the crate slower. Yeah, see, that's a very safe way of grabbing the crate. But then the jumps will be the same as always. The two, like... From my experience, you hardly ever get the 1 frame there. Whenever you do successfully get that, it's, like, almost always the 2 frame. It's, like... I don't know why. I guess because of, like, camera angle stuff. Also, yeah, no ledge grab skip there. Manleys were a lot better back then because of the lack of strats, so we didn't have to grab the 2-second stack. But obviously, I still need to worry about the cycle, which no other runner had to worry about. This floating block late save... Well, I say floating block... This is the floating block 2 frame that saves the least amount of time. Because you like, almost guarantee get a shitty cycle. If you get a god cycle, then yeah, it saves even more, but, like, I've only gotten that, like, twice. I lost ice physics glitch. Losing ice physics glitch back then was pretty common because of bad movement and stuff, but yeah. Back then, I don't think we knew what caused ice physics glitch. Oh yeah, this is, this is before the one, it barely adds difficulty, but, yeah, I used to wait, and then... there was no 1 frame here as well. Oh, I did do circulate. That is so not worth it. Yeah, I lost time from that as well. That was really unnecessary. And then, obviously, you know, not gonna have a good floating block. Sunday had literally no strats. We do not need to worry about Sunday, except for a fence jump thing, but it ended up not being fast. I think Gesk... Oh no, this is the old... target and alright, this is like one, like, okay. Other than, like, token frames and floating block skip and shit, like, this is, like, one of the few things that's actually, like, notable for increasing difficulty compared to now. We did a different route that not only loses time compared to the current route, you have to do this. It's not particularly hard, but it's not hard if you slow down a lot and really prep yourself up, but then it loses even more time. If you, like, barely prep this at all, then the new strat is only, like, half a second faster or some shit. But that's the thing. It's objectively easier because you don't do any tricks. You just move around the place, and the movement is not really different in any way that would make it harder or easier. It's just the same, you know. Literally, the only thing is that there's a patty with, like, a fucking fat hitbox. So if you touch it, then you lose, like, 3 seconds. But, like, it's so worth it compared to going for lamp jump. Lamp jump isn't that hard or anything, but it's kind of an easily chokeable trick. And then Dennis, yeah, just... Oh, wait, we did have the 1 frames. Alright, this must be shortly after we've... Okay, well, just pretend they aren't there. I just picked the fastest run that didn't have buffers, but yeah, like, I'm talking... Like, think about... I guess a better comparison would be, like, the 1:29:07, but that had a fucked route that we found out later was slow, so that's kind of... You know, I just wanted to end... This is on NTSC Xbox because we, like... Again, this was to illustrate the point that, like... Some things are the exact same, like how we know that NTSC Xbox is the fastest. But then there's some differences. Obviously, guest jumps are going to be the same, and those are some pretty bad jumps, but who cares? Plank is going to be basically the same. We used to have to do this old pop. Some runners still do it. It's like so... There's literally no skill to it. It's all just, like, luck. And then token 2 frame here fucking sucks. And then we have NMG's backtracking. And these are notable tokens. So obviously we had Sandwich Ring and Macho, which back then like didn't mean anything. And then we got SCDA Guitar and SCDA Sponge Ball. The only thing notable so far is that Sponge Ball is later, which automatically makes it harder. BBBH Guitar, but then we got BBBH Backwards. Fucking fantastic. I mean, I'm sure you know what BBBH Backwards is at this point. Makes throwing fruit, like, a lot easier and faster, but then we get this, like, fucking... I think this was with the old... Was I doing Electric Bash? Yeah, I was. Alright, cool. I fucking love this shit, dude. It's just cool as fuck. You know you're supposed to be your SpongeBob, that's the thing. And then, no disco 1 frame, but, token frame. And I would honestly argue that the token frame is kind of harder when you're this late in the run and you're not going to risk the 2 frame, and the camera angle is bad. but it's hard to say because, like, missing Disco Skip is more punishing. And then we got SCDA, BBBH Spongeball, but that was before Fast Corkscrew. Depression Combat, which, you know, there is some skill to it, but it's mostly just, like, bowling and stuff. And then we got Guitar, and then finally the... Oh yeah, there's also Guess Macho. That is also notable if you're doing Guess Jump, so... Yeah, the 3 notable... So there's 9 tokens extra, and the 3 notable ones are Playing Spongeball, Guess Macho if you're doing the Guess Jumps, and, Wait, what was it? What was the third one? Depression Combat, I guess? I mean, I guess it's notable in the sense that it's like a type of gameplay style that the average runner will not do themselves because most people play no pause storage. Also, here's a pretty notable thing. We had lag, but it wasn't like buffers. We had, yeah, Guitar Glide, and it was yeah. Although, this was before I was doing the R+A jump, so this shit, like, sucked. No Monumental Bash, and then Knucklehead is just gonna be what you expect, and so is Neptune, except Neptune was easier, because... Okay, there we go, Jesus Christ. So this is before the strat where you, like, guitar him immediately, and that matters because he starts his attack sooner, which means you're a lot less likely, like, you need to be decent at the game to be able to, like, make it to crabs when doing the guitar strat in one shot cycle. But obviously, again, much lower standards, so... And also that strat wasn't known to exist back then. And then it was also before the spinning strat, and that is a little skillful. So yeah, it just doesn't have those 2 things, that's the only notable thing, really. So yeah, that's what... And again, the structuring is certainly there. So now, I want to show you this 107.34, because this was the first God run I got in no pause storage. And this was done in April 27th... Well, I uploaded it on April 27th, 2020, right? And then finally, we'll be looking at this run, my most recent run, where it's June 27th, 2023. So the gap is 3 years and 2 months. So in 3 years... So basically, how much did the run change in a span of literally 3.5 months? And then how much has it changed in 3 years and 2 months? And why is it that the games feel so different yet so familiar at the same time? So obviously, right from the get-go, I mean, we have buffers. Although I've actually, yeah, I don't know why my thing says 125, but yeah. So this is consistent now, you should just always be getting that. I wasn't buffering Creek, but I believe I was buffering Bounce. Yes, I was, because it only loses like 0.2. So, getting the sandwich driving is now a billion times more consistent. Already, right off the bat, 12 seconds. This runs 12 seconds faster than the other one. And I'm on the same Xbox with, I'm pretty sure, the same... Yeah, no, definitely the same disc. This was before Sandwich Out of Bounds, so that's still, like, the same, except for faster driving. 3K now has Bounceless, which is easy, but it's still a trick that's been added to the run. It is a full frame window. You can buffer it, but I do not. And then to this point, so we move Bungie, not Bungie, Bungie's still being done early, but now we buffer this too. Like, a lot of people were, like, not even risking 3K Bungie 2-frame back in the day because it only saved 2 seconds, so if you weren't gonna go for the thingy anyway, then the buffer adds difficulty, but obviously that's, like, a stretch, but I'm just, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, Rubber-Dub's the same, and then obviously BBBH reverted back to what it was, and now we have Disco Buffer. I should say, though, that, like, the buffers aren't free, they're just, like, easy after you get the inputs down. Like, when runners, like, with a couple exceptions, but for the most part, whenever runners have tried to add buffers, they usually struggle. the inputs at first and they can't properly comprehend them, and this happened to me too. At first, I was getting floating block skip more consistent when going for the actual one frame, and then I was slowly, day by day, getting the buffer more and more and more, until it was about 50-50, and then it kind of depended on the day, and then finally I was like, yeah, no, I'm getting this more often than not buffering it. It did take a few days. It does take a little bit to get down, especially because there's, like, different types of like, buffers as well. And then fast corkscrew is in the run, and obviously getting the 2-frame is more common because the 2-frame is earlier in the run. This is before, yeah, this is still when we were doing Weenie early, which loses 2 scrolls, but not really notable. Floating block has finally been added later, and now it's, like, significantly less risky because of the buffer. And also I'm doing it when I should be anyway. And then we got, oh, fucking hell, what? I think I missed Skydive. Okay, I swear to God, Skydive was found in April, I'm positive, so I must have missed it. And then I probably buffered the first super jump. Where's the first super jump? I probably buffered it. I didn't? Okay, I think this was like in the early stages of buffers, and the second super jump still hadn't been found. Now that Men is still, like, essentially the same, except it got easier because of floating block buffer as well as the token buffer, and we're actually doing bungee late, but it was before the eel ball, so it's only saving 2 seconds, and the target cycle is more predictable. SCDA is basically the same, except I dropped Circulate, ironically, because, like, it took me a while to get down, it sucked. But yeah, I'm sure I still have Ice Physics glitch and everything. Yeah, like, more, like, the consistency just went up on the whole. And then obviously you got Throwing Through, which, like, we weren't doing that before, so it's like a difficulty adding thing. Sunday's still basically the same. Guess no more Lamp Jump. Guest jumps, there's only one guest jumps now, but obviously the identity of the segment is still all there. Plank is basically identical, except I'm doing the R+A jump. And then, yeah, I'm doing the guitar strat in Neptune. So, it might seem like, if anything, the run actually got easier at this point, and I would honestly agree, because not much got added. I mean, I suppose the difficulty of Throwing Fruit, and I guess technically, you know, like, even Disco Buffer is, like, harder than not doing it at all, I suppose. And obviously the thing is now is that a lot of runners would just like not even bother 2-framing tokens after like 3K or BBBH. So but now like there's a conscious effort to try and like get as many tokens as you can. You know, just like before the run, like, basically, the change between that run and this run, other than a few strats being added, is that it's easier because it's significantly more consistent. Yeah, before, it was like, try and get as much of a lead as you can in preparation for when you inevitably miss a bunch of token frames, so that you still have enough of a cushion to PB, while also, like, yeah, again, just, like, not fucking up the strats and, like, not fucking up too many 2-frames. Now, it's about... the 2 frames are, like, kind of miscellaneous, whereas, like, the actual, like, difficulty of the run is getting the actual, like, proper strats down, and not just the token frames. The token frames are very miscellaneous in comparison. So, like... there was some controversy with the buffers, but not, like massive controversy or anything. Looking back at it, I can initially see why, because, like, yeah, it did remove a ridiculous amount of difficulty. And you can kind of argue that the token frames were the identity of the game, and at this point in time, not enough have been added to compensate. So, the game's identity has been changed in the sense that, like... there's less tokens and the run's shorter, so it's like automatically easier, and the 2 frames have been mostly removed, so, and not many strats have been added. Like, the game still feels familiar, but not like, you know, still feels a bit different for sure. But then, we're gonna see something that feels, compared to this, familiar and this, different at the same time. Because this general route will roughly be the same, but the difference will be in the actual strats that are done in the run. I did drop this, but immediately we got truck skip, and truck skip is very hard. I would have never done truck skip if buffers didn't exist, for the record. Like, Jesus Christ. Saves like nothing, it's not worth it. And then, yeah, the rest of depression's the same. And then, of course, we've got fucking fast sandwich out of bounds. Now, we did go through a few setups, but this one is, like, the fastest one that's, like, RTA viable. And it's also the second hardest one that's RTA viable. This is hard as fuck, dude. I've done it thousands and thousands of times. And, yeah, it's bad. It fucking sucks. Doing it twice is, like, a pain in the ass. It just sometimes doesn't want to work. So this area went from, like, I don't even like the word free, but it genuinely went from free to one of the hardest segments in the run. Just from one trick. Like, I'm trying to lose a specific amount of speed, but you can't, if you lose, like, a specific amount of speed, then you'll bonk on the fucking invisible wall. If you lose enough speed, you won't. If you hardly lose any speed at all, it also won't happen. But if you just lose the exact amount, which is surprisingly easy to achieve, then you'll fucking bonk. And then, obviously, like, the nitroing on that dirt pile is so abysmal as well, because, like, okay, there's an invisible wall. I can't believe I didn't touch it, because I was, like, right next to it. I'm surprised this didn't hit it. It's so easy to go too far right or too far left, or to be thrown so high up in the air in the middle that you don't get the distance to make it across. Like, it's just absurd. And then you have to hit the trigger, which I only barely hit, and there's an invisible wall here, and there's an invisible wall here, and then I was almost too far right, and then I would have popped back in bounds and everyone would die, and then that was a good angle, but if I went too far left, would have hit the thingy and most likely lost my run. Not definitely, but still definitely could have. Yeah, so completely... sandwich driving still feels the same in the sense that it's mostly identical. Everything else is identical, but that one thing is genuinely, like, it's so big. 3K hasn't really changed. And then we got Rubber Dub Skip, and that also massively changed this level, too, and much more than sandwich driving. Because while each sandwich out of bounds saves like 18 to 20, this shit saves like a minute and a half. It depends on, like, target stuff, because, like, technically, if you... I don't know, it's not worth getting into, but if you only do one of the Rubber Dub skips, then it automatically doesn't save as much time as, like, skipping both, but, like, then if they were timed individually, it's kind of hard to explain. But yeah, both combined save just over 3 minutes. This, yeah. You know how many attempts it took for me to get this consistent? 6,000. A lot goes into this. I'm already doing it different from, like, basically everybody else. Everybody does it quite safe, which they should. But I start the setup quite early, I hold left, and then around here is when you want to start holding up. Until around, like, here, if you can see my cursor, which, yes, you can, I just looked at OBS. And then, like, you want to hold A. And then partway through the jump, you want to hold, like, down left. And then when you get past this part, then you want to, like, keep holding down left, and you press A for the second jump. It's one of those tricks that's way harder than it looks. Like, even runners that, like, yeah, sure, I've definitely done it more than anybody else. There are definitely runners who only did it a few hundred times and they feel confident with doing it in the runs. But first of all, they're doing it with the safest setup. Number two, they only get it like 70% of the time. I still see them miss it quite frequently. And third, They have to rely on wood frame. Not rely, but, like, wood frame saves some of their attempts for sure. I, like, basically never get wood frame anymore. Wood frame is, like, when you touch the bridge at, like, the correct frame. And, basically, well, it's a one frame. If you have a shitty setup, that could so easily save. It makes it significantly more lenient. I, like, can't remember the last time I got wood frame, because I never go for it. I never delay my jump enough to go for it. I'm kind of getting off track, but... yeah, that's how confident I am with my rub-it-up skips, though. I don't even, like, try to go for wood frame. I just favor consistency, but yeah. Like, that shit's way harder than dumb jump. It's not even, like, comparable, really. And it saves so much more. It's so unfortunate, though. I love rub-it-up skip. It made the run better, but if you are not willing to put the time in, it makes the run worse. If you're a beginner, it makes the run worse, because it's like an advanced trick that saves so much that you basically have to implement it at the... possibly even the early level, the beginner level, but most likely the early intermediate level, like when you start adding things like steamed early. Like, that's probably about when you'll add this. So it's an advanced trick that you're forced to do when you're barely an intermediate player. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. So, this, like, again, if you fit under those categories, I can see why you'd think rub-it-up skip is worse. Especially because it did fuck the route really bad for NMG and ETU, if anybody cares about that, which they don't. But yeah, essentially... this is, this made the run so much better if you're willing to put the time into it, which I did. Anyway, BBBH is, like, the same, and then Rub-it-up 2, it's the same except with fucking one frames, and I actually hate these. These are not consistent. Like, I'm sure if I grinded these for, like, fucking a billion years, I could get them quite a bit more consistent. But I just mean, like, you know, saves, like, 7 seconds. Like, the reason why it's, like, so awful, right? What's the visual cue? What is the visual cue? Like, hold on. Like, hello? Like, this thing is fucking, like, it's just a fucking tub. You can't even use, like, Patrick's feet like we do in BBBH and 3 meter. Like, there's just, like... This is worse guest jumps. Not the rest of it, but just, like, this singular jump is worse than the first jump for guest jumps. Because... like, what's the fucking... And then you have to... and then, like, look at this camera angle. Like, what the fuck? And then your camera angle will probably be slightly off when you do, actually, like... start setting up the actual trick, so it'll be, like, slightly off compared to what you're used to. It's fucking stupid. It's so stupid. But yeah, saves 7 seconds. Most people don't even try to go for it, which makes sense. But yeah, a fuck ton of difficulty has been added to the early game because of sandwich out of bounds and this. A lot of difficulty. And then runs basically the same again, pretty much. Well, skydive, and then the second super jump. We are buffering it, but, again, buffers are easy, not free. That's one of the harder ones, I will say, even though it's still easy. If your jump spacing is too good, you'll lag clip through this, and you'll, like, die, basically. And also, it's, like, fucking dark and kind of hard to see because of, like, the camera angle and, like, you know... But flower jump is so fucking easy that this shit is hard, like, noticeably harder, even, like, with the buffer. And now the man is at quite the transformation. It has Spewer Boost, which is, it did get a setup update recently. But in this current form, one of the hardest RTA viable tricks in the entire game. Now we ledge grab, and it's a lot more consistent, but I still get it like 60 to 70% of the time. It's still not actually good. It's good enough. But yeah, if you do it perfectly, it saves like 5 seconds, and my angle is a bit off, so I save like 4.5. Actually, nah, I'd say like, nah. I'd say I save 5. But yeah, huge difficulty. Like, the only thing is that most of the time when you miss it, it doesn't result in death, and you don't lose much for missing it, usually, and you only have to do it once. Like, it hardly ever makes or breaks a run on its own, but yeah, it's... Yeah, and then we got a harder version of Fast Lobster. And then we got Bash Gang, which isn't hard, but it's just one of those tricks where it's, like, not hard until you miss it. Like, that. I don't know why, just, like, it's so missable even though it's not fucking easy. I mean, even though it is easy. And then we got Quick Chris. Even just spinning here makes Chris skip, like, a lot harder. Like, the act of getting up here, you have to spin, but you get way more speed, which makes, like, the Chris skip, like, a lot harder to do. It, like, unironically makes the trick's difficulty go from, like, 2 out of 10 to, like, 5 out of 10. And then if you go for the ledge grab skip as well, then that's more like 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 difficulty. And then this trick in itself is like 7 out of 10 difficulty. Like, I don't even know how to describe it, really, other than, like... You gotta, like, walk off a bit, then, like, go neutral, and then kind of, like, flick the stick left and B, like, press B. Like, and you can't be, like, too close to the edge, and you can't be too far off the edge. And then, of course, we got Monster Buffer, but, again, you probably shouldn't be doing that. Dude, I don't know why sometimes holding left click is not doing the thing. Alright, and then SCDA will be similar to before. This is before I buffered the 3-meter token, though, but now I buffer the 3-meter token. And we have to grab the... Or at least I need to grab the SCDA stack, which... You know, cycle stuff then. Floating block, you know, no ice physics glitch being lost, you know how it is. At this point, we had a faster throwing through, but it's, like, arguably kind of easier. Sunday got a huge makeover. Huge makeover. It went from, like, virtually free to, like, kind of hard. Spiral skip. Not hard, but, again, one of those easily chokeable... It's hard to practice. Same with Sandwich Out of Bounds. They're both hard to practice because they're so late in. You don't need a practice mod for this trick, but it makes it a billion times easier, obviously. Well, not billion, but, like, it makes it, like, 10 times easier. Faster, at least, to learn. Sandwich Out of Bounds, I can't recommend it to most people, but if... Fast Sandwich Out of Bounds is, like, not viable, in my opinion, unless you use the practice mod. I feel like you have to use practice mod. You don't have to use practice mod for this, but it would take a while to learn. You just nitro the right parts and kind of, like, turn correctly, or else you might pop... You might fall into the... You might pop back in bounds, or you might fall into the pit, or you might be out of bounds and you gotta recover it, but then there's, like, 2 soft lock points if you go out of bounds. So that trick isn't hard, but it is certainly notable. Especially because if you miss it, like, that's so much time lost. And then here's the big one, which I actually missed this run. Sunday Jump. Very hard. For a bunch of reasons. There's no consistency to it. Because there is no way to make this set of inputs consistent. Because you can't turn and nitro at the exact same time, and, like, turn... Like, you can't hold left in an exact way without changing it during the entire trick. It has to be feel-based. Because this trick is feel-based, it'll never be fully consistent. I mean, but there's, like, easy feel-based tricks. This is not easy because the leniency is just so fucking bad. Like... That happened because I landed on the rock a little too late. If I was, like, a bit further back, I would have gotten the height necessary. But because, like... And that could be chalked up to nitroing a bit too early, or, you know, moving off the ramp in a weird way, or even during the turn, I should have turned harder so that I would cut more of my speed so that I land on the rock. Luckily, it's not the end of the world in this category because you only do it once, but it is a fairly tricky trick. And then we got the second spiral skip. Also, you're more likely to get hit by gumballs because of spiral skip, but that's not, like, a major issue. Gask is the same, Dennis is the same, Guess 2 is the same. Plank, we now have this. It's 100% consistent, but it's hard. Like, so the other one had no consistency, but was free, and this is, like, hard. Kinda hard. It's like, easily chokeable. You have to jump when you like, earlier than you think you need to, if I recall correctly. I haven't done the trick in a while. And now we're buffering this. And then we got Sponge Glide. This ended a bunch of my runs, because you can either do 8 wall jumps here, or you can do 10. And 8 is completely fine if you have good height, but that's the problem. Getting good height with 8 wall jumps is hard, but then you're not getting all the time. So I think I did 10 wall jumps here. 10 is, like, very safe. Like, you'll always have, like, more than you need then. Unless you somehow fucked up, like, really bad. This is harder than the Guitar Glide clip, but not by that much. It's just difficult, like, initially learning this. It's just, like, you gotta get used to it. And then you gotta, like, spin kind of late here for some reason. Well, you just get more distance, basically. It's like, it doesn't look like it's doing much, but it is. And then we got Monumental Bash, which adds some little bit of difficulty, but not too much. And then we got Mindy Skip. There's not, I mean, there's like a tiny bit with like canceling the menu, but like not really anything notable. Oh yeah, I forgot to, I don't know if it was in the 128, but I showed you, but we had like we were like not nitroing through the pot correctly, but now we do. And Neptune doesn't have it because the trick was found like just after this run. But I would, like, I do spin in front of the statue now. Which is especially, I do that in Hundo and all tokens. It's harder without upgraded spin, because that means you have to get closer to the tables before spinning them, which means you gotta play more risky. Basically, it just makes it harder to make it in time to spin. Like, it's very hard to make it in time to spin. Like, to then, like, angle yourself properly to then make it worthwhile to spin. But yeah, that's a lot of stuff that's been added. Has anything been found since, other than the spin thing? No, not really. A 3K thing got found, but it's not worth it. Oh yeah, Bungee Ball. In Now That We're Men Bungee, you can bowl the first target. Not the first target, but like the first target that gets hit is from your bowl. It's like a 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10 difficulty trick. Obviously it has no consistency unless you do bungee late. The problem is that it sets up bowl storage. It sets up bowl storage, which means that the game will crash in Sunday because of either, I don't know which one, but either SCDA Floating Block or SCDA Sponge Bowl. So you have to change the routes so that you do SCDA after Guess 2, which loses scrolls. So instead of it saving 1.5 like it's supposed to, it saves 1. But it's still worth it because the trick is fairly easy, and you get to do guess jumps 2.5 minutes faster and Sunday jump. However, there is another trick in SCDA, which if I ever came back to this category, I might add it. I was getting it like 40 to 50% of the time. Block Boost. You need to play pretty fast. But, like, during this, like, when the spikes are turned, like, the right way, you just have to, like, go in front of the block and then, like, move into the spikes, get damage boost off the spikes, and then make it to the to the platform. The problem with this is that it's terrible, so you have to make it fast enough. Okay. I do that. I get the, like, you know, 85% of the time probably, like, fast enough. Alright, you know, that's fine. If it weren't for buffers, that trick would not be remotely viable. Not only for how late in the run it is, because you're on you took a trampoline, the camera points down at you, which means that you can't see Patrick's damage animation, which means that you can't time it properly, because you can't see the full animation to then know when to press A. It would just straight up not be consistent if it weren't for buffers. So isn't it kind of ironic that buffering actually added difficulty to... Because otherwise that trick would have no viability whatsoever. But yeah, damaging yourself on the right part of the spikes is also difficult. You know, if you accidentally go too high up, you'll touch the top of the spikes and then, like, you won't go anywhere. If you go too down low, you just won't have enough height, and then if you go too far right, you'll just miss them entirely. If you go too far left, you'll get knocked in the wrong direction. And even then, you can there's a bit of leniency, but you might get, like, a ledge grab or something, which sucks. And then, because, like, you won't land on the platform with the token in the exact same spot every single time without fail. Why did the music end? Oh, no, I think it was just... Okay. So there's, like, you remove a little bit of normalcy with, like, how you view the token, like, on, like, you know, instead of being able to land on the same part of the thing every single time, it's gonna be slightly off. And again, it's been moved to as late as possible, too. Well, not literally as late as possible, throwing fruits earlier, but other than that, as late as it could be, without losing additional time, so yeah. Block boost saves like 8 seconds, but yeah. Again, I'd probably do it if I came back, but... Also, it's possible to go too fucking fast, by the way. Or if you lose Ice Physics Glitch, you already, like, I already tried, like, you cannot make it. So, yeah, yeah, abysmal trick. I don't like that it exists. I think that's actually it now. Yeah, except, and the more consistent spew boost, but still sucks. Yeah. So that's a lot of stuff, right? So, obviously, it's familiar. The route structuring is almost identical. And, like, half the tricks are what you remember. So, like, what's, you know, what gives? Why am I saying it's, like, so similar yet so different? Well, that's the thing, right? It's the difference originally with, like, the 107 was that it was a run that favored, you know, it was easier and it was less, like, what people would generally call filler. Now, the run is way harder than it used to be. Like, we're not doing these 2-frame tokens except for sponge balls. But the thing is that the run is still a lot harder now than it used to be back in the 128 days. But, like, the tricks that have been removed are the naturally inconsistent tricks. So, the run has gone from very inconsistent to consistent. Now, it's all about... Like, the difficulty of the run comes from all the tricks that are in the run, whereas originally... It was the token frames plus, like, floating block skip, and gas jumps, as you would imagine. But, like, almost all of the inconsistent stuff has been, like, removed. There's still the horrible rubber to 1 frames. Spew boost is not the consistency that I would like. Gas jumps can still be aids. Hold on, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I'm just running out of energy because I got 4 hours of sleep. And I've been talking for a bit. I'll just let the run play now. I think gets the point across at this point. So, the thing is with, like, the token frames, right? And why buffering them, like, changed the run so much, whether you like it or not. Like, they are 2 frames, but, like, it's much harder than, like, it sounds, because, like, the 2-frame window is, like, more off the token than you would expect, and the 2nd frame gives absolutely no indication that you got it. That's the issue. Sometimes I even wonder to myself if they would be overall, in the long run, easier if they were 1 frames, because it would make inching up to them easier, like... Almost certainly. Now, if you just, like, pause into a token frame, into a, you know, like a sponge ball token, like, yeah, that's harder. But the way that we would, like, trying to get these tokens consistent was by slowly inching up to them. But you know the reason why slowly inching up to them is inherently flawed? It's because you're slowly inching to them, what will usually happen is that you will inch into the 2nd frame, not realize that it's the 2nd frame because it's too late in the run, you don't want to risk it, blah blah blah, and then you unpause, and then you suffer all that time that you wasted inching up to it, in addition to the token animation. In my opinion, token frames are inherently inconsistent, and they never would have been made, like, truly consistent by now. I'm sure we could have gotten them more consistent. You know, some texture setups on the floor, or even, like, you know, camera angle setups, or... I think inching up to tokens would have been phased out, and we would just, for the most part, like, gun for it, or at least, like, set ourselves up in a particular spot and then walk towards it. But, like, then there are so many token frames. You can't get them all in a run. It's impossible. It'd be like how, you know... Not the exact same thing, but it's kind of like how... I don't even know if there's ever been a battle run where, like, somebody's gone literally every single cruise boost first try. It's kind of like... If it has happened, I mean... I wouldn't be surprised if it's happened, like, once or twice, but yeah, like, it's obviously completely unreasonable to... get them all in a run, but that's the problem. It's not just get all of them. It's honestly get, like, even, like, 2/3 of them. It's just unreasonable. Even after all this time, I don't think we'd be getting, like, 2/3 of them. I think the run would be naturally, inherently inconsistent. And you could argue, oh, well, you're never gonna get every trick in the run. I mean, even this one flat 49 they're showing on the screen right now, this is, according to you, one of the best runs you've ever done in your life. And even this one, it missed Bash Gang, and it missed Sunday Jump. And it was before, like, a couple other strat additions. And yeah, that is true. But, like, the thing is that missing most of the tricks in the game feels more fair than missing a token frame. Because that second frame, like, pausing, being unsure about if it's the 2 frame, and then unpausing, and then seeing that it would have worked is so fucking annoying. Like, when you miss sandwich out of bounds, the only question is, like, if you got the trigger or not. Which, like, you can overcompensate for it on purpose. You can't overcompensate for the fucking 2 frame, other than going for the 1 frame, and then that causes the problem that we were talking about before. Like, there are tricks that genuinely are trash, like the rubber dub 1 frame jumps, and old spewer boost, and fast sandwich out of bounds. And they do feel less fair than the average token frame, but they feel more fair than chaining a bunch of token frames. That's the thing. Like, doing fast sandwich out of bounds and spewer boost in the same run is very hard, but I'd still rather do that than get, like, 4 token frames in a row that aren't, like, the easier ones, like Bungee and Trey. If it's literally just, like, the floating block ones, like, unbuffered, like, fuck that, dude. Again, they're just naturally inconsistent. Like, there is skill to it, but it's inconsistent. And that, again, once again, that is the difference between then and now. Is that it was very hard to get those token frames, but if you could do it, you usually had a run. Now, the token frames are quite secondary, and now it's all about, like, it's mostly about getting all the tricks. And the tricks feel, you get more obvious results after grinding them. They generally save more time, usually. They usually don't, like, instantly kill the run if you miss them. Like, because that's the thing, right? The problem with, like, that's another thing with the token frames. If you miss them, that is the time loss. Like, you get the whole time loss. Of course, how badly you fucked it up depends on, you know. But, like, you can still kind of fuck up a trick and then, like, still get it and save time or break even with it overall. Whereas, like, with 2 frames, if you don't get them, you don't get them. That's the thing. And I haven't even brought up just, like, missing them entirely and, miss warping and the entire run's dead. Like... Oh, yeah, I forgot about truck skip, too. Yeah, no, truck skip is, like, so fucking bullshit. I actually would rather do, like, honestly, like, any of the individual token frames instead of truck skip, but... Yeah, again, there's, like, a few exceptions, but Movie is, like, a surprisingly consistent run. It's the kind of run where there are a lot of hard tricks, but if you're willing to do them, like, you know, hundreds of times, like, they will be consistent, and then you're rewarded for that consistency. And you could say, oh, well, you know, the token frames, blah, blah, blah. I don't think you understand that I've been doing the Creek 2 until recently. I've been doing the Creek 2 frame the exact same way since 2017, and it's not any more consistent. I still would get it. I mean, it depends on the fucking day, but on average, I'd probably get it like 30% of the time, maybe a third. Like, shit was so bad. And now that I buffer it, I get it like 85% of the time, 90%. for like 50-something frames of time loss. Honestly, can't justify that for no pause storage, but like for hundo, like, oh my god, I'm never going back in hundo, dude. No way I'm ever going back. Like, but that's the thing though, right? Getting out of early game more means you get to go to the later segments more, which makes the run more enjoyable. And then when you nail or miss the tricks, it feels more fun and fair than missing the 2 frames. Essentially. I don't think there's anything else I can say without basically just repeating myself. So yeah, the run feels the same because the general structuring is the same. A lot of the same tokens are still done in roughly the same kind of order. But it feels so different because the priority is not the token frames, it's the strats. As consistency has been favored more and more. Oh yeah, by the way, no matter how bad Fast Sandwich Out of Bounds is, it's still more consistent than Creek 2 frame. That one I just don't think could ever be made consistent because of how close to the edge it is, and like, tuning the camera angle would be hard to justify. Oh my god, no, I completely forgot to mention this, and this is a really big deal as well. Token frames on an OG controller are fucking cancer. They're so bad. Like, imagine where the start button is on the controller, right? On an OG controller. You know where it is? Under the stick, and not just like barely under the stick. It's like a decent distance away from the stick. Right? How are you? We've already established that inching is naturally inconsistent. How are you going to walk up to the token? Like, walk up to it, like, gun into it. And then also, like you gotta have your thumb on it, but then your thumb, like, your finger, your thumb is blocking the start button, so you can't do that. So then you gotta change to, like, one of your fingers, really awkwardly. And that's not even factoring if you're using Patrick and you cartwheel into the fucking thing. And then you gotta, like, press start with your other finger. It's just like, dude, what the fuck? That's how you make it consistent. Like, it's so fucking dumb. Or if you don't need buttons, like, on the right side, you can use your right... You can, like, elevate your left hand and, like, use your right thumb to... That's, like, as good as it gets, really. And for buffers that can work, it's still easier to run the game with a 360 controller. But yeah, that's a really big deal, too. It's pretty obvious why inching up to the tokens would have just, like, phased out after a while. But, like, on an OG controller, how are you supposed to not do that? Because, I mean, have you seen it? Also, in case anybody has the funny idea of, we should ban 360 controllers then because that means that they make the run literally easier, bruv. We'd have to have, like, a good faith system, which would be stupid, unless we enforce, like, everybody have webcam, which is also stupid. Additionally, for as long as there are members in the community who prefer the OG controller, which there are a few... As long as not literally everybody prefers the controller, then the 360 controller is not objectively better, which therefore means that it's not an unfair advantage technically. It is an unfair advantage technically, but like it's also not objectively unfair, even though it basically is. So, yeah. Also, 360 controllers in the long run are cheaper because 360 controllers online are cheaper than OG controllers new and used. So you'll overall, if you run this game for a long time, it'll be cheaper to use a 360 controller. And yeah, honestly, like, if we ever, like, went to hard drive, I mean, that'd be one thing. But if we went to hard drive and we, for some reason, banned, like, 360 control, I mean, I'd be done with the game. But if for some reason I wasn't done with the game, then I would so much rather just ban the token frames at that point. Dude, I just had another thought, but then I lost it while I was finishing that sentence, but it was also, like, kind of notable. Oh, yeah. If hard drive were allowed, that would change the run quite a bit, and it would go back to its old identity, except, like, way harder, because you'd have, like, all those same token frames and stuff, and so many more. I mean, compared to that 128 run, I mean, you got, like, Circ... I mean, no, yeah, it's Circulate in that, too, but... Yeah, you got, like, the bungees and stuff, too. And keep in mind, any token frame that adds a load automatically saves more time on hard drive, so they're even worse on hard drive. And, let me just move to a random part. And it's not even, like, can you imagine? I mean, I would drop truck skip, but, like, yeah, you'd just be, like, +8 on average out of no cheese immediately. So then if you make, like, any mistake in depression, the run's, like, automatically over. Sandwich out of bounds, like, you're gonna get to sandwich... Like, sandwich out of bounds sucks, right? But at least you get there, like, often enough. Not anymore. So... it would make the run harder, but I don't think it'd be in a good way, because it would just make the toxic tricks even more toxic, and then you get to late game, like, so rarely that you're just kind of thrown off and fucking... Like, and then, like... Oh yeah, weenie out of bounds is also a trick, but it's as no viability in any way, so we don't need to worry about that. I would be tempted to get rid of the second Rock Slide Super Jump, because it's so... It might as well go for the first one, because, like, going that path is the fastest anyway, but... I'd be tempted. I probably wouldn't get rid of it, but I'd be tempted. Bungee Lay is a lot harder to justify with no buffer. Because the only way it saves time is if you get, the floating block token buffer. And and you can't reliably two-frame that, so you're just making, you know... So that's just, like, AIDS. Oh yeah, and then, like, rubber dub one frames. Those, obviously, like, it just makes it... Like, because the run is less consistent, you don't need those 7 seconds as much, which means, like, missing the jumps in itself doesn't mean as much. You don't, like, it doesn't matter as much. But it just piles up when it's also, like, other stuff, like Spew Boost and shit, like... You know, and, like, Neptune... Oh yeah, Plank would be very different too with Hard Drive regardless. I mean, but, yeah. Plank would definitely be made, like, a lot slower and worse. It'd be kind of cringe. Okay, now I think I've actually gone over everything. So, thank you for watching, and goodbye.